Good evening and salutations, my GH fans. I guess we'll start off with Trina. Since that has been over the time that I've been watching the show, that she has been on the show, she has always been a very hot topic, right? A little bit of a controversial topic in some ways, but we'll start off with her and Curtis. Now, I'm going to be honest, this episode did not put her exactly in a good light. Okay, so Curtis is not there pretty much telling Trina that, after the whole blow up of the wedding and catching her up on it, maybe things are going to be different with you and Kai now that he's quote unquote seen the light, right? Now, Trina is kind of acting like her dad. Very self righteous, very like no one's allowed to make mistakes. No one's allowed to sit there and be redeemed. Once you make a mistake, you're practically done, right? And so for the most part, I kept sitting there rolling my eyes because on one hand, yes, I do understand. She's like, the trust has been broken. It doesn't really matter about the contents or the fact that he didn't really know everything. The fact no matter was, he broke his promise to me. And I'm like, in the same way, I'm like, wow, you are being just as self-righteous, kind of a jackass like your dad. Yeah. Especially with the whole Porsha thing. Yeah, she messed up, right? But at some point, there got to be a little bit of room for grace. And this is what he kind of is one of telling her his daughters that listen, people make mistakes, people aren't perfect, but if you keep sitting there going about it that life, you're gonna wind up burning a lot of bridges. And so on one hand, I'm like, I'm glad that you are starting to recognize your issues, because you're doing that with your own wife. So I'm like, that's good. You don't want your daughter to sit there and turn out to be just as much of a jackass as you. And while that's going on, you have Jocelyn and and Kai talking. Now, I don't know how to sit there and describe this conversation because I felt like I've had this conversation with so many people in my live streams when it comes to this exact subject, right? One of the things that Jocelyn says is that Drew pretty much kind of messed up your relationship with Trina, and Kai's like, no, 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 he didn't do that. I did that. I'm the one that sat there and betrayed her trust, you know. And I feel like that's a lot of times when it comes towards some of the fans, they tend to think with their emotions, right? Drew didn't help with the situation. Okay, let's be honest. Drew didn't. But at the end of the day, this was Kai's choice. Kai chose to sit there and do that, right? And when I sit there and say by Drew, didn't help in situations that, well, he's been acting like a typical scumbag, right? And that whole thing with Trina's parents and stuff like that. So his situation didn't help, but Kai made that choice, right? So it's like you can't blame Drew for every single thing. Even Willow's life, it being destroyed the way it is. Yes, he did not help. He was definitely a cause in that. But Willow went willingly with that. So that's why I can't put everything on Drew. Yeah, he didn't help because he was just generally being a controlling, egotistical scumbag. But Willow was just being a moron and just stupid. And you know what I'm saying? Like, she went along with it. But then it gets even worse though, right? See, one of the things that Jocelyn says is that, well, he chose Drew over Trina. And it's not as simple as that. As he put it, he chose to sit there and warn Drew because of him. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't like he understands that he screwed over Trina and he broke his promise, but he did that because he felt like it was the right thing to do. He knew that he didn't sit there and take those pills, and he didn't sit there and you know what I'm saying, like he didn't pay for it. He didn't do any of that. So like it wasn't as simple as choosing one over the other. He chose to do it because he felt in his heart it was the right thing, and that's why he was like he didn't regret what he did. And he tells that to Trina. He's like, when Trina walks over, Trina's like, do you regret choosing Drew, knowing what kind of person he was? And I think both of them kind of said the same thing. And he's like, listen, it's not about who Drew is. It's not about him being a total scumbag and him doing some sleazy stuff. It's about who Kai is and what, I'm saying, his values. At the end of the day, we all have to sit there and look at ourselves in the mirror and really sit there and contemplate, did we do the right things today? And with Kai, he's like, I couldn't look myself in the mirror knowing that regardless of what kind of person this guy is, I couldn't do that because I'm not going to sit there and compromise who I am and my principles. And that's how I took that. But see, Jocelyn is very emotional about the thing, and she's not she's not in a position where she could sit there and see things objectively because she's friends with Trina, okay? And there's things that Drew that Drew has done to her family. So all she's sitting there looking at it as in like, oh well, it's fine. You can keep your principles, but you stood by a very awful and terrible person. It's like, did you not just? It's almost like she blew past what he said. Because again, it wasn't about Drew being a terrible person. It's about him maintaining that, you know, he stands by his principles. And I feel like if she wasn't so emotional about this conversation, she was able to sit there and see logic and reasoning, that at the very least you could be like, listen, I don't like what you did, but I understood why you did what you did because of you. But that's just not how Jocelyn tends to operate. And especially in a situation like this. I don't know. I also feel like, a lot of times when I have these conversations with people, the first thing that they will sit there and say, oh, once again, you're defending Drew. And I'm just like, what? And it usually comes out of remarks like that usually come from a place of emotions because they don't like Drew. When you come from a place, and it's also kind of what Curtis said, when you make emotional decisions, that's a lot of times people tend to make emotional decisions. They don't tend to sit there and think stuff out. So I always find it very interesting when I have these live streams and I'm talking about this stuff. It's like, I hate Drew, so if you're not bashing Drew as much as I am, then you're defending him. And I'm like, what? Like, there's no middle road. It's just, you have to pick one side or the other. I've never been like that. Well, that was a long rant, but it needs to be said. What else? Okay, so let's get to the Michael and Drew scene. I'm actually surprised that Michael did let him in the house, right? And Drew comes over and he tries to do this whole I'm a noble good guy and I'm making this plea to sit there and be like, hey, listen, we're done and I'm not pursuing her anymore. She doesn't want anything to do with me, but you should sit there and let her see her kids. As though, let's be honest, bro, everyone can sit there and see through that. Everyone can sit there and see that you're only doing this so you can try to get brownie points with Willow. And it's at a point where it's like, I can generally sit there and usually see two sides of things. But that is clear as fucking day, right? And throughout this conversation, Michael picked up on the fact that, you know, Drew made sure that Willow didn't see him in Germany, right? Because this whole, oh well, you're trying to allow her, you're trying to make this plea with me since I have the power to allow her to see her kids. But she would have been able to saw her kids if we would have had that conversation in Germany. So you're coming over here, you're being full of shit, you're coming across as a scumbag. And in all reality, if you really wanted her to sit there and see her kids, you wouldn't have did what you did. So this is never about seeing her kids. Once again, it's just like the way that they make Drew, it's so bad. It's so bad. And you know what? In all reality, I mean, I still want people to sit there and use a bit of logic and a bit of reasoning, but I guess it's very hard for some people to do that when they see the level of scumbagness that he's willing to pull. But, you know, people get so emotional about the situation that they want to sit there and say Kai is this, that, and the third. And by the way, yes, he does wind up seeing Trina, and ultimately, you know, this is something else that really blew me about Trina. Is her level of control. Her level of control over his emotions. I mean, she literally was like, are you regretting you betraying me for Drew, seeing what kind of a scumbag that he is? And once again, he tells her the same thing, right? And then he's like, listen, even if I did feel some sort of regret, would you, would that please you or whatever? And she pretty much practically said, yeah, it would make me, I would like that. It would make me feel good. And that's the issue. I don't know, I think that this level of control over him and how she wants him to feel maybe comes from the fact that she has not dealt with her trauma from Spencer. Spencer was sat there and taken away from her. And maybe there's a sense of, she needs to sit there and control a certain situation or control situations. And when it's out of her hands, she doesn't know how to respond. And I said that before, maybe months or a couple months after, I was like, girl, you need therapy because this is ruining your relationship. And it's almost like you sat there and you took what your dad said and it just went out the goddamn window when he didn't respond the way that you wanted him to. And in all reality, when she walked off, I was kind of like, maybe he dodged a bullet. Listen, I don't know about y'all, but I would never, ever, ever in my entire life want to go out with somebody who feels that they can dictate what my emotions are and be disappointed when I don't feel the way that they want me to. No man wants that. I mean, no person wants that in general. Like, girl, I know that she was sitting there hugging her friend and everything like that, but she needs to make a point to a goddamn therapist. Now, the only thing with Porsha is that she pretty much tells Isaiah that she is resigning, doesn't sit there and say why, and then talks to Curtis, right? And it's like, listen, I'm tired of living under this bubble, because Curtis sits there and thinks that his plan may work. Hey, maybe Drew may leave and just leave us alone since, he told the truth to Willow. And of course, Drew goes to Liz's place, and good thing that Willow isn't there because Willow wants nothing to do with him. Now, Liz unknowingly told Drew that it was Curtis that told the truth. Because the whole time, Drew was sitting there thinking that it was Nina that did that. And Curtis is sitting there saying to Porsha, as long as Drew doesn't know that I was the one that told Willow I'm going to be fine. And when Drew found out, he just kind of confirmed it to her, and he knew right then and there that he was the one that blew up his life. So of course he is going to go scorch earth on Porsha. So it's a good thing that she is actually got that shit drafted up and ready to go. Um, you know, Maxie talking to Brooklyn. See, too many goddamn soap operas. Brooklyn. And, Brooklyn once again is just saying, well, I didn't mean it to happen. I didn't mean for him to sit there and find that file. I was like, yeah, I know that you probably didn't, but you were careless enough to sit there and leave it in the living room where anyone could sit there and walk past. And I think that's part of my whole issue. It's like she's upset with Lulu for Gio finding out the truth, even though she didn't mean for Gio to overhear. You also didn't mean for him to find that find that file. But every time you go out with Lulu, you get upset and you get angry like, oh, I'm still upset with what she did. But yet in the same breath you're sitting there apologizing to Maxie and apologizing about the situation. Like, girl, you two sides of the same coin. This is why I'm not on either one of them sides. Um and of course, Lulu comes there and does her usual bitching and moaning about the situation, and now they're talking about, well, Liesel is my son is contacting Liesel for information and da 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 da. And Brooklyn is like, I do apologize for that. I do apologize for him sitting there seeking out the truth. But then she says in the same breath, which she's not wrong, if you or Dante would have told the truth, then he wouldn't have had to sit there and seek out those answers. So, you know, and that's the same thing what Lulu would sit there and say to Brooklyn. So it's getting to a point where they keep bringing that up, and it just keeps getting more repetitive and more annoying, and just me rolling my eyes every time I sit there and see it, because it's like, yes, it's the same conversation, but it's like they're both getting mad, they're both getting triggered, whatever you want to call it, about the situation. And instead of just taking a breath and being like, oh shit, wait, I did the exact same thing. Maybe I shouldn't fly off the handle today. Nah. Um. Now, Rocco was sitting there asking Laura to sit there and intervene because, talked about the whole poolside blow up at the Metro Court. So Laura calls Lulu. And Laura's like, I heard that, you pretty much kind of pulled full stop to Rocco visiting Liesel. And she's like, yes, I did, because she's a terrible person. And she did bad things. And my experience with her. And of course, Laura's like, yeah, I get it. But, she made a real effort to sit there and change. She still has that look on her face, like that angry little girl look on her face. And I'm like, girl, once again, you're doing the same thing with Brooklyn that you're doing with Liesel. You don't feel anybody else can change, but yet you wasn't a choir girl way back in your heyday. Carly wasn't a quiet girl, years before. Hell, she sat there and screwed over your relationship with Dante. So what? Only you can only sit there and deem who can decide to turn her life around and be a good person and change. Like, how does that work? I think that's the part that just really irritates me every time she talks about Brit. Every now she's sitting there talking about Liesel. It's the same dumb shit that she was on with Brooklyn. It just gets so annoying. Um, the goddamn book. Oh, so Rick is not there talking to um, Willow. Now Willow woke up and she pretty much told Liz that, yeah, I pretty much effed up yesterday. I effed up hard, Bobby. And Rick. we're sitting there telling Willow, listen, you can't sit there and try to fight for custody right now. You're going to have to sit there and build up your credibility. These incidents, these wilding out moments that you have in, if you was to sit there and try to fight for custody tomorrow, Michael would easily win. You're going to have to sit there and really show the course that you can sit there and follow the rules. I really recommend some therapy because she was just all over the goddamn place. And instead of her listening to what Rick said, even after she was, coming down hard on Nina, saying, well, you're just as responsible as Drew is for making me lose my kids. And every time she says that, I swear, I can feel people being like, just when I want to feel bad for you, you have zero in accountability for what you did, but you rather blame everybody else. Oh, it's Nina's fault. It's Drew's fault. No, it's not everyone's. Honestly, tell you the truth, this is your fault. And once again, she's like, well, I trusted you just like I trust. It's like me following Shiloh. It's like me following Harmony. Yes, this all comes from you, though. You just following what other people say and do. Like this comes from you. And she didn't listen to Rick. Instead, she goes over Michael's place. And after she's like, "Oh, I'm done with Drew, and I've seen the light, but can I see my kids? Are you serious? Like, it's like, did you not learn anything?" And I think that was just so jarring that I had to sit there and take like 2 minutes before I hit the record button because I'm just like, we're just doing this shit over again. Like nothing changed. This man is literally not just, "I'll represent you for free or whatever. Don't worry about it. Thank you. I'm going to sit there and take your sage advice and throw it right out the goddamn window." And here we are again. Huh. Wow. 22 minutes of talking, and I feel like I still didn't cover this episode. I'm not even joking. I really feel like I did not cover this episode. There was just things that I feel like I missed. So we'll talk about this tonight because 22 minutes and yeah. Well, anyway, if I missed anything, write in the comment section below. Let me know what your thoughts are. We'll talk about this tonight, the usual time. You know what time it is. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.